New Orleans was alive with mystery, the city's very air thick with history and intrigue. In the early afternoon, the French Quarter hummed softly with life, musicians strumming lazy jazz melodies, the distant clip-clop of horse-drawn carriages, and the murmur of conversations slipping through the wrought-iron balconies above. A light fog clung to the streets, swirling around cobblestones damp from the morning's rain. To Alana Rivers, it was a dreamscape, a city where every corner seemed to hold a story waiting to be uncovered. For the past year, Alana had thrown herself into her work as a journalist. Investigating stories that others were too afraid or uninterested to touch was her calling. The grit of exposing corruption and unraveling secrets drove her, but it came at a cost. Late nights, endless deadlines, and the heavy burden of truth had begun to wear on her. That day, after filing a particularly grueling report, Alana wandered into the heart of the French Quarter in search of respite. She stumbled upon a small café tucked between a voodoo shop and an antique bookstore. The building was charming, its red door framed by cascading vines, a chalkboard sign outside proclaiming "Best Coffee in NOLA." Inside, the warm aroma of roasted beans mingled with the faint scent of old wood and rain-soaked air. It was the kind of place where time seemed to pause, offering a temporary escape from the chaos outside. Alana ordered a coffee and settled into a table near the window, pulling out her notebook in an attempt to organize her scattered thoughts. As she scribbled half-formed ideas, her gaze drifted around the room, taking in the eclectic mix of patrons. And then she saw her. The woman sat alone at a table in the corner, her posture relaxed yet composed. A worn black leather notebook rested on the table in front of her, its pages open as she wrote with fluid precision. Her long, dark blonde hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, framing a face that was both elegant and enigmatic. She wore a simple fitted blazer over a dark blouse, her style understated yet effortlessly striking. A silver ring gleamed on her left hand, catching the light as she moved her pen. Alana couldn't look away. There was something magnetic about her, an aura of quiet intensity, as if she carried 1,000 stories within her but shared none of them. Her expression shifted as she wrote, her lips curving into the faintest smile, her brow furrowing in thought. For a moment she seemed to belong not to the present but to another time, another world. When the barista returned with Alana's coffee, she leaned down conspiratorially. "That's Rowan Ellis," she whispered, nodding subtly toward the woman. "She comes here almost every day, always with that notebook. Nobody knows much about her, but she's intriguing, isn't she?" Intriguing was an understatement. Alana's journalistic instincts kicked in, and she couldn't help but wonder who Rowan was and what stories she carried. But it wasn't just curiosity. There was something deeper, a pull she couldn't explain, a feeling that made her chest tighten and her thoughts blur. Alana forced herself to focus on her coffee, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup as she tried to shake the growing fascination. She reminded herself she was here to unwind, not to chase after strangers. But when her gaze flickered back to Rowan, she caught Rowan looking at her. Their eyes met, and Alana felt a jolt, like the static shock of touching metal after walking across carpet. Rowan's gaze was sharp yet warm, her eyes the color of honey in sunlight. There was curiosity there, but also a hint of amusement, as if she had caught Alana staring and found it endearing. Alana's heart thudded in her chest. She looked away quickly, her cheeks flushing, but in her haste she bumped the edge of the table. Her coffee tipped precariously, sloshing over the rim and landing on the floor with a soft splatter. "Shit," Alana muttered, reaching for the napkins. "Here," a voice said, smooth and low, almost melodic. Alana looked up to find Rowan standing before her, holding out a napkin. Her smile was warm, almost disarming, and up close she was even more striking. There was a confidence in her movements, a quiet self-assuredness that made Alana's own nerves feel glaringly obvious. "Thanks," Alana said, taking the napkin and dabbing at the spill. "Not exactly my most graceful moment." Rowan chuckled, the sound soft and rich. "Maybe it's the universe giving you an excuse to say hi." The comment caught Alana off guard, and she looked up to find Rowan's gaze steady on hers, her smile tinged with mischief. For a moment, Alana was speechless. Rowan had turned the mundane act of offering a napkin into something intimate, almost flirtatious. "Well," Alana managed, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "If that's the case, then hi." "Hi," Rowan replied, her smile widening just slightly. "I'm Rowan." "Alana," she said, extending a hand. Rowan shook it, her grip firm but gentle. "Nice to meet you, Alana," Rowan said, her voice carrying an easy warmth. "I'll let you get back to your coffee, but maybe we'll run into each other again." Alana nodded, unsure what else to say as Rowan returned to her table. She watched as Rowan gathered her things, the black notebook tucked securely under her arm, and left the cafe with a parting glance and a smile. Though the encounter was brief, it left Alana reeling. She couldn't stop replaying it in her mind, the way Rowan's voice lingered like a melody, the mystery in her smile. Alana had spent her career chasing stories, but for the first time she felt like one had found her. As Rowan disappeared into the fog-laden streets of New Orleans, Alana realized she wasn't just curious about the woman. She wanted to know her. The days following Alana's brief encounter with Rowan passed in a haze. Rowan's presence lingered in Alana's thoughts like a melody she couldn't shake. Her curiosity, both professional and personal, burned with intensity. She replayed every detail of their interaction. The way Rowan's voice seemed to wrap around her like a secret, the fleeting smile that hinted at depths Alana desperately wanted to uncover, and most of all, the ever-present black notebook Rowan held like it was an extension of herself. Alana told herself it was just the journalist in her that couldn't let it go, but deep down she knew better. Rowan wasn't just a puzzle, she was magnetic, a pull Alana couldn't resist. It was pure coincidence or maybe fate, when they crossed paths again a few days later. Alana had wandered into a small independent bookstore in the Marigny, drawn by the promise of creaking wooden floors and the faint scent of old paper. She browsed idly, her mind still swirling with thoughts of her latest article, until she turned a corner and froze. There was Rowan. She was standing by a shelf of poetry, a slim book cradled in her hands, her head bowed as she read. The golden afternoon light streaming through the window seemed to frame her perfectly, casting her in a halo of warmth. Rowan's lips quirked into a faint smile as she turned a page, completely absorbed in whatever she was reading. Alana hesitated, her heart pounding. She could have walked away, let the moment pass. But something in her wouldn't allow it. Taking a steadying breath, she stepped forward. "That's a good one," Alana said, nodding toward the book in Rowan's hands. Her voice was steady, casual, though her nerves were anything but. Rowan looked up, her honey-brown eyes locking onto Alana's. For a moment, surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by recognition and something softer. "Is it?" Rowan asked, her lips curving into a small smile. "Do you always judge people's reading choices so boldly?" Alana chuckled, the tension easing slightly. "Only when it's one of my favorites. That's Mary Oliver, right?" Rowan glanced at the cover and nodded. "It is. Seems I've made a good choice." "Then we have good taste in common," Alana said, her grin widening. Rowan laughed softly, the sound rich and inviting. "So it seems." Their conversation flowed naturally from there, an effortless exchange of thoughts on books, music, and the quirks of New Orleans life. Rowan's wit was quick and understated, her words carefully chosen yet never stilted. She had a way of making Alana feel like the only person in the room, her attention unwavering and genuine. Time seemed to blur as they left the bookstore together, their conversations spilling over into a walk through the nearby park. They found a quiet bench beneath an oak tree, and Alana felt the world narrow to just the two of them as they shared fragments of their lives. But as much as Rowan charmed Alana, there was an elusive quality about her that Alana couldn't ignore. Rowan answered personal questions with deflections that were as graceful as they were frustrating. When Alana mentioned her work as a journalist, Rowan's smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "Let's hope you never have to write about me," Rowan said lightly, though her eyes betrayed a hint of unease. The comment lingered in Alana's mind long after they parted ways. Rowan's warmth and humor felt genuine, but there was an undercurrent of secrecy beneath her polished exterior. Alana couldn't shake the feeling that Rowan was holding something back. Something big. That suspicion only grew stronger when Alana received an unexpected text from Rowan later that week. The message was simple yet cryptic. "If you're willing to take a risk, meet me at the docks tomorrow at sunset." Alana stared at the screen, her mind racing. 1,000 questions flooded her thoughts. What kind of risk? Why the docks? And why her? But despite her hesitation, there was no question of whether she would go. Rowan had drawn her in too deeply already. The next evening Alana arrived at the docks as the sun dipped low over the Mississippi River. The water shimmered like molten gold, and the air was thick with humidity, carrying the faint scent of brine and damp wood. Alana's heart pounded as she scanned the area, half expecting Rowan to disappear into the shadows. She found her standing at the edge of the pier, silhouetted against the fading light. Rowan's posture was relaxed, but her grip on the black notebook was tight, her fingers curling protectively around its edges. As Alana approached, Rowan turned, her expression a mixture of vulnerability and resolve. "You came," Rowan said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Of course I did," Alana replied, her chest tightening at the sight of Rowan's guarded smile. "What's this about, Rowan?" Rowan hesitated, glancing down at the notebook in her hands before meeting Alana's gaze. "There's something you need to know," she said. "Something about me. But it's not easy to explain." Alana stepped closer, her curiosity and concern warring within her. "You can tell me. Whatever it is, I'm here." Rowan took a deep breath, her fingers brushing over the cover of the notebook. "I've been running from something, for a long time. And I thought I could handle it on my own, but..." Her voice broke and she looked out at the water, her expression heavy with unspoken fears. "The truth is, being around me could put you in danger." The words hit Alana like a jolt. "Danger? Rowan, what are you talking about?" Rowan's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Alana saw a crack in her carefully constructed armor. "There are things in my past, things I've written about, that some people don't want getting out. I've tried to keep my distance to stay safe, but lately it's gotten harder. No. I don't want to keep you out of my life. But if you stay, you need to know what you're getting into." Alana's heart raced, her mind spinning with the implications of Rowan's confession. But as she looked at Rowan, at the raw vulnerability in her eyes, the courage it must have taken to share even this much, she felt her resolve harden. "Rowan," Alana said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you're facing, you don't have to face it alone." Rowan's breath hitched, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. Instead she smiled, a small, tremulous smile that held more gratitude than words ever could. The days following Rowan's confession were a blur of emotions for Alana. The gravity of Rowan's situation, paired with the growing intensity of her own feelings, left her restless. She knew Rowan's warning was serious, that staying close to her meant stepping into danger. But the thought of walking away wasn't an option Alana could entertain. The mystery surrounding Rowan gnawed at Alana's mind. Who was after her? What? And what was it about that notebook she clutched so tightly, guarding it like a secret she couldn't afford to lose? Alana was a journalist at heart, her instincts sharpened by years of chasing hidden truths, and her curiosity burned brighter than ever. But it wasn't just professional interest that drove her. It was Rowan herself. Her vulnerability, her strength, and the undeniable connection they shared made Alana want to protect her at all costs. Still, Rowan's reluctance to reveal the full truth left Alana feeling helpless. And so she did what she did best, she started digging. Late one night, with the city's hum muted by a rare stillness, Alana sat in her apartment, her laptop glowing softly on the coffee table. The scattered notes and printouts surrounding her were the beginnings of an investigation she hadn't admitted to Rowan. It wasn't that Alana didn't trust Rowan to tell her the truth. She sensed Rowan was being as honest as she could. But whatever Rowan was hiding was deeply rooted, tangled in layers of fear and secrecy that couldn't be unraveled in a single conversation. Alana's research began with what little she knew. Rowan Ellis. The name, it seemed, was as much a shield as the notebook she carried. Alana found no public records linking the name to anything significant. No social media presence, no articles, no photos. It was as if Rowan Ellis didn't exist beyond the confines of the French Quarter. But then a breakthrough. After hours of cross-referencing, Alana stumbled upon a pseudonym that sent a thrill of recognition down her spine. C. Monroe. It was attached to a string of critically acclaimed but obscure novels. Works of literary fiction that explored corruption, betrayal, and the dark underbelly of high society. The books had been praised for their raw authenticity, their unflinching portrayal of the moral rot hidden behind wealth and power. Alana quickly ordered copies of the novels, and over the following days she devoured them. The writing was stunning, sharp, evocative, and deeply personal. But what struck Alana most was the way the stories seemed to blur the line between fiction and reality. The characters were vivid, their struggles eerily specific, as if the author had lived through the very betrayals they described. It didn't take long for Alana to piece together the likely reason for Rowan's secrecy. One of the novels, Gilded Shadows, detailed a thinly veiled version of a real-life scandal. A powerful real estate tycoon exposed for his involvement in illegal land deals and money laundering. The book had been published 3 years earlier, around the time the scandal broke in the news. Alana remembered the fallout vividly. The tycoon had faced ruin, but his connections to organized crime had made the case dangerous for anyone digging too deep. Rowan's work wasn't just fiction. It was a weapon, a meticulously crafted exposé wrapped in the guise of storytelling. It explained so much. Rowan's reluctance to share her past, her guarded nature, the ominous warning that being near her meant stepping into danger. Alana's chest tightened at the thought of the threats Rowan must have faced, and the courage it took to keep writing despite them. Rowan, Alana began one evening as they sat on the balcony of Rowan's apartment. The view of the French Quarter was breathtaking, the city's lights shimmering against the dark expanse of the Mississippi River. But Alana's focus was entirely on Rowan, who sat across from her, sipping wine with an air of quiet contemplation. "Yes?" Rowan asked, her voice soft but wary, as if sensing where the conversation might lead. Alana hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've been thinking about what you told me. About the danger you're in." Rowan's gaze sharpened and she set her glass down. "Alana, I told you." "I know," Alana interrupted gently. "You told me to stay out of it. But Rowan, I can't. I care about you too much to just sit back and do nothing." Rowan's expression softened, her eyes flickering with a mixture of gratitude and worry. "It's not your fight," she said quietly. "I've already put you at risk by letting you get close." Alana leaned forward, her voice steady. "You're not alone in this anymore. You don't have to be. Let me help." Rowan studied her for a long moment, her lips pressing into a thin line. Finally she exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "You're stubborn, you know that?" "I've been told," Alana said with a small smile. A faint laugh escaped Rowan's lips, and for a moment the weight between them lifted. But when Rowan's gaze drifted to the notebook resting on the table between them, the shadows returned. "There's something you should know," Rowan said, her fingers tracing the edges of the notebook. "This isn't just about the stories I've written. My next book. It's different. It's personal." Alana's heart skipped a beat. "How personal?" Rowan hesitated, her voice lowering. "It's about me. My life. The things I've been through, the people I've crossed. It's not just a novel, it's a confession. And if it gets into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." The gravity of Rowan's words hit Alana like a blow. This wasn't just a story, it was a lifeline, a testament to the dangers Rowan had faced and the courage it took to confront them. Alana's resolve hardened. "Then we'll protect it," she said firmly. "No matter what it takes." Rowan looked at her, something unspoken passing between them. For the first time, Alana saw the walls Rowan had built around herself begin to crack. And as they sat together in the quiet of the night, Alana knew she would do whatever it took to keep Rowan safe, even if it meant stepping into the mystery that had become her life. The night was warm, the air inside Alana's apartment thick with the quiet hum of their shared presence. The city outside was alive with its usual symphony, distant jazz, muffled conversations, the occasional rumble of a passing streetcar. But inside, the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Rowan sat curled up on Alana's couch, the ever-present black notebook resting on her lap. A glass of wine sat untouched on the coffee table, its ruby-red surface catching the light of a flickering candle. Alana sat cross-legged across from her, leaning forward, her gaze fixed on Rowan with a mixture of curiosity and something far deeper. The space between them felt charged, their unspoken connection weaving an invisible thread that pulled tighter with each passing moment. They had spent the evening like so many others, talking about books, about music, about the small joys and frustrations of life. But tonight felt different. There was a weight to Rowan's silences, a hesitation in her smile that Alana couldn't ignore. She could see it in the way Rowan's fingers absently traced the edges of her notebook, her shoulders tense despite the calm she tried to project. "Rowan," Alana said softly, breaking the quiet. "What's on your mind?" Rowan looked up, her honey-brown eyes meeting Alana's. For a moment she said nothing, her lips pressing into a thin line as if she were deciding whether to speak. Then she let out a slow breath, her gaze dropping to the notebook. "There's something I need to tell you," Rowan said finally, her voice low but steady. "Something I should have told you sooner." Alana's pulse quickened. "I'm listening." Rowan hesitated again, her fingers tightening around the notebook as if it were a lifeline. "This," she said, lifting the notebook slightly, "isn't just a collection of ideas or random thoughts. It's the outline for my next book. But it's also more than that." Alana leaned forward, her attention riveted. "More how?" Rowan swallowed hard, her voice trembling just slightly as she continued. "It's my story. My life. The people I've known, the things I've seen, the secrets I've uncovered. Every detail, every name, every event. It's all in here." Alana's breath caught, her eyes darting to the notebook. She had known it was important, but this was something else entirely. Rowan's gaze met hers again, and the vulnerability there was unmistakable. "If something happens to me," she said, her voice breaking just slightly, "I want you to use it. Tell the truth. Expose everything." But she paused, her expression hardening. "I don't want you to get more involved than you already are." Alana felt a wave of emotions crash over her. Shock, concern, anger, and most of all, a fierce protectiveness that made her heart ache. She reached out, her hand brushing Rowan's knee. "Rowan, I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Rowan shook her head, her smile faint and tinged with sadness. "You can't promise that. The people I've written about, they're powerful. Dangerous. They won't stop until they silence me, and if you get too close, they'll come after you too." "Then let them," Alana said fiercely, her grip tightening slightly. "I'm not afraid of them. And I'm not afraid to fight for you." Rowan's eyes filled with tears and she looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't understand. I've spent years building walls, keeping people at arm's length because I knew this day would come. I didn't want anyone to get hurt because of me. But then you," she trailed off, her voice catching. "Then I what?" Alana pressed gently, her heart pounding. Rowan turned back to her, the tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "Then you walked into that cafe," she said, her voice trembling. "And for the first time in years I felt something I didn't think I could feel anymore. I let myself hope. And now, I don't know how to protect you without losing you." Alana felt her chest tighten, her own eyes brimming with tears. She reached out, cupping Rowan's face with both hands, her thumbs brushing away the tears. "Rowan," she said firmly, her voice filled with conviction, "I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Rowan closed her eyes, leaning into Alana's touch as if drawing strength from it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, the silence between them filled with unspoken promises and the weight of everything they had yet to face. When Rowan opened her eyes again, there was a softness there, a glimmer of hope that hadn't been there before. "You're stubborn," she said with a faint smile. "You've mentioned that," Alana replied, her lips curving into a small smile of her own. Rowan let out a shaky laugh, the tension in her shoulders easing just slightly. "I don't deserve you," she said quietly. "Don't say that," Alana said, her tone gentle but firm. "You deserve to have someone in your corner. You deserve to be loved." Rowan's breath hitched, her gaze locking onto Alana's. The moment stretched between them, heavy with emotion and unspoken words. And then, slowly, Rowan leaned forward, her lips brushing against Alana's in a kiss that was tentative at first but quickly deepened, the weight of their connection washing over them like a tidal wave. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. "I'm in this," Alana whispered, her voice steady. "All the way." Rowan nodded, her hand slipping into Alana's, their fingers intertwining. "Then I guess I have no choice but to trust you." As the night deepened around them, Alana knew they had crossed a line they could never uncross. And though the road ahead was uncertain, she also knew one thing for sure. She wasn't about to let Rowan face it alone. The first sign something was wrong came late in the evening. Rowan had sent a text to Alana hours earlier, saying she planned to spend the night at her apartment working on her manuscript. Alana, buried in research for an upcoming article, hadn't thought much of it until her phone buzzed insistently, breaking the stillness of her living room. It wasn't a text this time. It was Rowan calling. When Alana answered, Rowan's voice was shaky, her words tumbling over each other in a rush of panic. "My apartment. Someone broke in," Rowan said, her breath hitching. "The notebook, it's gone. Alana, they took it." Alana's heart clenched. She was already grabbing her keys. Where are you? I'm outside, Rowan replied, her voice trembling. I couldn't stay there. I didn't know where else to go. Stay where you are, Alana said firmly. I'm on my way. When Alana found Rowan sitting on a bench near the corner of her block, her shoulders hunched against the cool night air, she felt a surge of protectiveness that nearly overwhelmed her. Rowan looked up as Alana approached, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and relief. Without hesitation, Alana pulled her into a hug, feeling Rowan's body tremble against hers. They came for the notebook, Rowan whispered, her voice muffled against Alana's shoulder. It's happening, Alana. I thought I had more time, but they found me. Alana pulled back, gripping Rowan's arms tightly as she looked into her eyes. You're not running, she said, her voice resolute. We're going to figure this out. Together. Rowan hesitated, her gaze searching Alana's face. It's not just about me anymore, she said softly. If you stay, they'll come after you too. Let them try, Alana said fiercely. I'm not leaving you, Rowan. Whatever it takes, we're going to get that notebook back and end this. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Alana leaned heavily on her network of journalist contacts, calling in favors and piecing together fragments of information about the break-in. Her instincts as an investigator kicked into overdrive. And though the stakes were personal this time, she found herself sharper and more determined than ever. It wasn't long before she uncovered a critical lead. The notebook, she learned, had been sold to a wealthy collector with a penchant for rare and controversial manuscripts. The man, oblivious to its true contents, had purchased it through a third party, likely as part of a broader operation to remove incriminating evidence from Rowan's possession. Rowan, meanwhile, struggled with guilt and anxiety. She couldn't stop blaming herself for bringing danger into Alana's life, but Alana's unwavering support kept her grounded. Late one night, as they huddled over a map of the city in Alana's apartment, Rowan placed a hand on Alana's arm, her eyes filled with emotion. I don't deserve this, she said quietly. Alana covered Rowan's hand with her own, her gaze steady. You deserve to be safe. And you deserve to be loved. I won't stop until you have both. Rowan didn't respond immediately, but the way she squeezed Alana's hand said everything she couldn't put into words. The confrontation came on a stormy night in the outskirts of New Orleans. The collector's estate loomed large and imposing, its wrought iron gates gleaming wet under the rain. Alana and Rowan had planned meticulously, using Alana's contacts to secure access and confirm the notebook's location within the house. Once inside, the tension was palpable. Alana's nerves were steel, her years of investigative work giving her the composure she needed to navigate the high-stakes situation. Rowan, though clearly anxious, followed close behind, her determination matching Alana's. When they finally reached the study where the notebook was kept, they found themselves face-to-face with the man behind the operation, a corrupt editor Rowan had exposed in one of her earlier novels. His face twisted into a smug grin as he leaned back in his chair, the notebook sitting on the desk before him. I wondered when you'd show up, he drawled, his tone dripping with condescension. Rowan stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. You don't scare me, she said. And you won't stop me. The editor's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. You think you can win this? I own the narrative, Rowan. People like you, idealists, you never last. Alana stepped forward then, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. She's not alone, she said. And you've already lost. I have contacts who would love to know what's really been going on behind your polished facade. All it takes is one call. The editor's confidence wavered and Alana seized the opportunity. Within moments they had secured the notebook, the editor's threats reduced to empty bluster as Alana and Rowan made their exit. With the notebook safe, Rowan finally had the evidence she needed to confront her enemies head-on. Alana's connections in the media proved invaluable, and within weeks, the truth behind the threats against Rowan was exposed. The corrupt individuals implicated in her novels faced public scrutiny, their power stripped away under the harsh light of justice. For the first time in years, Rowan felt a sense of freedom. Months later, at the launch of her newest book, a raw and unflinching memoir that wove her personal story with the exposés that had defined her career, Rowan stood on stage, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. This book is for the people who refuse to stay silent, she said. And for one person in particular. To Alana, the woman who transformed my mystery into love. I couldn't have done this without you. In the audience, Alana felt her heart swell with pride and love, her gaze locked on Rowan as the room erupted into applause. The shadows that had once loomed over them were gone, replaced by a bright and boundless future. Together they had faced the darkness, and emerged stronger, their love unshakable and their bond unbreakable.